Today's awesome interview is with David Ounianon. Dave is a real estate investor and agent out of St. Louis. And he was able to leave his corporate job in 2 years using the BRRRR Method. He talks about how he was able to do that. And now he, through his agency and working as an agent, he's able to help investors do the same thing and use the power of the BRRRR Method. So really cool interview. Stick around for all of that. Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now today we're joined by Dave. Hey Dave, how you doing, man?
What's going on, Barry? Thanks for having me.
Man, it's my pleasure. Glad to have you on the show. Excited to dive into today's conversation because I actually heard you on another podcast and thought it was a great interview and loved what you were doing. So I'm excited to dive into all of that today. But before we do you want to give us a brief introduction into you and what you've been up to?
Yeah. So I'm David Ounianon. I'm a real estate agent and a real estate investor. Didn't start that way, was kind of raised like so many other people and told I need to go to college and get a job working for somebody else. And so that's what I did. Was a software engineer for 12 years, just kind of climbing the corporate ladder until I finally hit a freaking wall. And that's when I realized I was totally unhappy and unfulfilled in my job. And so started looking for ways how do I get out of this thing? I was caught up in a lot of financial debt, like a lot of people are in this country. I was making six figures. I was making really good money, but the day my paycheck came in, it was the very next day that everything was spent on all these bills, all these lifestyle upgrades. Like everybody else, I went out when I got a raise, I went out and bought a nicer car. I bought a bigger house. I bought a lake house, bought a boat, jet ski. And by the time I had gotten a few promotions, I still didn't see retirement coming any closer from, looking at 30, 40 years into the future. And so I started trying to figure out, how do I get out of this thing? And that's when I stumbled upon really the best investment vehicle in the world, and that's real estate.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree with you more. I know everyone has their own thing, but yeah, real estate to me is by far the best. By far, there's not a question in my mind. And that's interesting that you said that there, because I think they talk about it in bigger pockets, right? The expense creep, right? So it doesn't matter at the end of the day how much you make, right? I know people making 300-400 grand and they're going paycheck to paycheck, and it's like,
yep.
How is that even possible, right? But what happens is you don't just go from 0 to 300 grand, right? You probably make 100 grand and you make 150,
exactly.
200, and as that grows up, you buy a little bit more. Like you said, you buy the boat, you buy the lake house, you buy a more expensive car, you buy a bigger house, you start spending more on groceries, you start eating out, and all of a sudden, from making 100 grand to making 400 grand makes no difference because you're not saving any of that money. Yes, you have more things, but I think that's a good point for everyone to remember. And I think I see a lot of wealthy people and people that do well is they keep their expenses. You keep the expenses the same as when you were making 100 grand, when you make 500 grand, or when you make 100 grand, as opposed to when you were making 30 grand, right? That you keep that the same, and that's when you can invest and then save, and it really makes a difference. So I think that's such an interesting point that you brought up there. Was there a point, you said you would climb the corporate ladder like so many people, was it like an aha moment, something that really just like the light bulb moment went off in your head where you're like, wow, what am I doing right here? Or was it just a gradual amount of different things?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of all culminating up to this particular point that I remember so clearly, because I was sitting in my cubicle, and it was November here in St. Louis in the Midwest, and around 4:30 in the afternoon is when the sun already went down, so it was already dark outside. And I remember looking up from my desk thinking, I just spent all of my daylight hours stuck in a cubicle doing something that I didn't want to be doing. And it just felt so miserable. And I was like, man, there's gotta be some other way. There's gotta be some other way. And I had heard just kind of whispers, in the past about, real estate. That's where, there's this famous quote, 90% of all millionaires become so through real estate. That's an Andrew Carnegie quote from over 100 years ago. And it's still more true today than ever. And so I just started looking on my phone, and at the time I was big into fantasy football. Like that's all I did. I listened to fantasy football podcasts, gamble on football games on the weekend. And so I turned off the fantasy football podcast and just said, well, maybe there's a podcast about real estate investing. And lo and behold, I find dozens and dozens of these podcasts like yours and so many others. And I just started drinking from them like a fire hose. I mean, I listened to hundreds and hundreds of podcast episodes those first couple of months. And that's what gave me the confidence and the belief that, hey, other people have done this and they're telling us exactly how it can be done. So there is hope for me. There's hope that I can get out of this thing if I follow these principles and rules and do what they did.
That's cool. That's cool. And I love that about podcasts as well. People always say that you are the sum of the 4 or 5 people that you surround yourself with, right? And that's true. And I believe that. But I always say you don't need to be actually surrounded by these people. They don't need to be your best friends. They don't need to be someone that you hang out with. But David Green and Brandon Turner, right? They could be 2 of their circle, right? Me, 10 million other great podcasts out there, right? If you have that surrounded and it's in your ears and you're listening to it every day, you are surrounding yourself with it, right? You're a fly on the wall for that conversation when you sit on that podcast. And I think that is a phenomenal way for people to surround themselves, believe that, like you said, because I think a lot of it is belief as well. But hearing that other people have done it, other people from similar backgrounds to you, these people aren't millionaires already, that you can do it. And it builds that belief in people, I think.
Yeah. That's so true about that. And like, so one of my big idols is Tony Robbins. He's one of the most famous professional development coaches in the world. And it's like, I don't even need to have that conversation with him personally. I can just bring a problem and say, what would Tony Robbins say if I told him what was going on right now? And I've seen enough of his content to know how he would answer and what direction he would send me in. It's so true.
That's so cool. I love that question. What would Tony Robbins do, right? You can apply that, not just Tony Robbins, if you admire someone in real estate, you admire someone, whatever, what would this person do, right? And you can really get a good answer for your question in that way. Absolutely. So how did you get started? So you're consuming these podcasts and you're fascinated and you believe that you can do it. How did you get started?
Yeah. One of the things I noticed of listening to all these podcasts, people would always ask what's your favorite book or what's your best book that you would recommend to somebody, and like 99 out of 100 people would say this little purple book called Rich Dad Poor Dad that I've got behind me on my shelf. And I had not been a reader. I hadn't read a book since I was required to in college or high school at the time. And so I was like, well, if all these people are saying they're recommending this, but I better go out and get it. And so I got it off of Amazon and it came in. And like, I couldn't put it down. I read the whole thing in 2 days and I was like, oh my gosh, I am caught up in this thing called the corporate rat race. I'm just sitting here spinning in a wheel, not making any advances in financial freedom or building up my assets or anything like that. I was just taking on more liabilities that was offsetting all my W-2 income. And so it changed my whole thinking about money and finances and how to get the ship steered straight. And just read a bunch. I got addicted to reading after that because I didn't understand how much I could learn from these books. I thought learning was only for, that's what I went to school for. And that's why I had a bachelor's degree. I got an MBA. I thought I knew everything I needed to learn. And it got me down this path of just addicted to reading, listening to more podcasts. And months and months of listening all this stuff, I finally had enough confidence to pull the trigger on my first investment deal. But there's so much fear involved in that. You get this analysis by paralysis. It probably took a good year of soaking in all this information before I finally pulled the trigger.
And when you did, what was that venture? What did you buy? Did you buy a flip? Did you buy a rental? Did you do a wholesale? What was the first deal?
Yeah, so I got really excited about this thing called the BRRRR Method, and that's basically, it's an acronym that stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. And basically, it's a way to create an infinite return in real estate. A lot of people don't understand that you can actually make infinite returns in investing in real estate, and that's because the down payment that you're putting on a property, you can refinance that back out, and so you're cash on cash. You've got no cash left in it at that point, but it's throwing off cash every single month. It's like basically creating your own personal ATM machine or money tree it's printing money for you. And so I was so excited about getting started with that, and finally found a property from a wholesaler off market here. And, he said that the rehab was going to be about $20,000 to make it rent ready. I didn't really know what I was doing. So I went in there and said, I'm going to put a good padding on this thing. I'm going to say it's going to take 25,000. And after I bought this thing, there could not be more things wrong with it. I literally went through the next 6 months. It was an absolute nightmare for me and my family. I mean, I was losing sleep at night. I had paid cash for the property, and I was going to put cash into the rehab as well. My wife and I were both working in corporate jobs for the past 10 years, and we had saved up a really nice nest egg in our savings account. And by the end of this project, there was nothing left in the account. And if one more thing was going to go wrong with the property, I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. So it was really, really scary times for me right there. And eventually got it to the point where we weren't going to be able to hold on to it and rent it out because we'd sunk so much capital into it. At the end of the day, I had to pour over $50,000 in rehab costs into this property. So basically doubled my projections, and ended up having to sell it 6 months later just to get some of my capital back. So lost thousands of dollars at the end of the day, but I got basically a PhD in rehabbing houses.
And yeah, it's tough. That's tough. And it's,
yeah.
For the first deal, right? For a lot of people, that first deal is crucial for a lot of reasons, right? One, yes, you can make money and you can sort of do well with it, but more than anything, I think it's that proof of concept, right? And I think it's important that a lot of people have a good experience with the first one, because there might not be a second one if you don't have that. But exactly. Credit to you, right? Your first experience wasn't good, but then you still went on. What was it? Just this driving force that you knew that real estate was good, that real estate was where you wanted to be, that made you go, hey, that was horrible, I'm not doing that again? Or you went, that was horrible, let's do another one, right? What was that mindset in that, you think?
Yeah, so it came down to like really getting my why straight before any of this started. And reading some of the books is like Start With Why by Simon Sinek was a big impact on me. And it's basically, you take fear and you can leverage it. So there's the fear of failing in real estate. There's the fear of losing money on this one particular deal, right? But for me, the fear of being stuck in a cubicle for the next 30 years was much more scary. Like that was the worst fear of mine. And I kind of leveraged that fear as opposed to losing money on a deal, and said, you know what, I got to keep going. I'll figure this thing out. I know tons and tons of people have already proven this concept works. It's just, I've got to get the skills and I've got to get the experience necessary to be able to succeed at that. And knock on wood, after that first deal, I hadn't lost money on a deal since. And just kept going, kept building my confidence and growing my portfolio until I eventually, 2 years into investing, was able to leave my corporate job and get into investing full time.
Very cool, very cool. And I love that. I can't remember who someone talks about fear setting rather than goal setting, and goal setting is great. But I think the power of the fear is almost stronger than the power of goals. If you realize what you're scared of, like you said, that corporate job of living the next 40 years in this cubicle, being miserable, blah, blah, blah. I think that's almost more powerful than the yacht and the fancy house and the Ferrari or whatever your goals is, right? But I think that fear of living, like, I have fears myself. And when I talk to that, I get more motivated than thinking about, I could be in the Bahamas now or whatever. And I think I love that idea of fear setting, because I think those drive us more.
Yep. Yeah, it's almost everybody that I see successful in this business isn't motivated by going to lay on the beach all day every day. That's never the thing that gets you motivated enough to start taking action and get deals done. It's always something bigger than yourself, and that's kind of what I've found through experience too.
Yeah. So your second deal, was that more successful? I think you said you haven't lost a deal since that first one. The second? Was that a Burr?
Probably one of my easier deals ever. It was just a foreclosure we picked up off the MLS, and I think we paid like $65 for it, put $5,000 into it, and then it appraised for 100 grand. And so right there, that's the Burr method to a T. Was able to refinance out that 70 that I had into it, and it was throwing off cash every single month after that. So
wow. So the first time around, you went in there, the wholesaler said, hey, this needs 20 grand. You took his word, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, you knew, and you thought, hey, everyone's honest in real estate, right?
Yeah.
Right? Nobody makes up numbers in real estate. But then the second time around, I'm sure you learned your lesson. How did you evaluate what that one needed, having had that experience first time? How did you know that it only needed 5 grand?
Yeah, after that first one, I kind of figured out, okay, this is what everything, breaking it out. I'm a former engineer. I'm real analytical when it comes to this stuff. So I built a whole spreadsheet on how to accurately estimate a rehab. And we give that to all of our clients now at wealth agents. But it basically has line by line every single thing that you would need to fix inside or outside of a house. And so I'll go through the house and take pictures and then go back to my spreadsheet and go line by line, seeing, hey, does it need this? Does it need a roof? Does it need drywall? Does it need paint? And plugging in the numbers, and it spits out a very accurate estimate of what this whole project's going to cost now. And so that's the plan that I've used going forward after the first one, to make sure that I don't miss anything.
Very cool, very cool. So, and then on that second one, how did you finance the second one? Was that finance cash again, or did you go through hard money? Did you do traditional? How did you finance it?
Yeah. So one of the lessons I learned on my first one was that, don't use your own money, especially don't use all of your own money to invest in real estate. If you do have cash, that's great. You want to have that there for an emergency situation. And so totally took a pivot and decided, and most of my deals, going forward from that first one, I've used other people's money, whether that be the bank, whether it be private lenders. I don't typically use a hard money lender just because they're so dang expensive. It's like 18% interest to get hard money in our market. But yeah, so basically use the commercial bank on the second one. They funded 80% of the purchase price and then 100% of the rehab cost. And so that left me to only come up with the 20% down payment on the purchase price. At that time, I had pulled a HELOC on my lake house property, and I was using that HELOC to fund my 20% down payments.
Okay, so yeah, so that's great to get that. To get that,
all my capital, keep my wife happy, and not freaking out about our bank accounts going to zero every time I decide to invest in real estate. And so it worked out really well.
But how were you able to get that sort of financing? How, because obviously at that point you don't have too much experience, right? It's not like you can go, hey, I've done 10 of these. Can you fund this for me? Because we've seen the success. Was there a challenge with getting that?
I did have to go to a few banks. So I basically put on my suit, started meeting with local bankers here in my market. And I put together basically a packet that showed people like what I was going to use the funds to do. And it wasn't just like this pie in the sky thing. It was, here's my budget for the rehab on this property. This is where the money's going towards. This is what this thing's going to appraise for in the end. These are the comps. And then this is what it's going to rent for in the end. And this is what my cash flow is going to look like. I usually try on a single family to be cash flowing, $300 or more per month. After one of these refinance type deals. And so that's what I would share with, I think I met with 3 or 4 bankers, and out of that, I got 1 or 2 that I'm still working with today because of that.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And I think that's important as well, is because is understanding what these bankers and these lenders, what they're looking for, right? What are their concerns? And if you can address those concerns and show them that you're organized, for one, I think is huge, and that kind of what you're talking about, even if you are newer, and just address those fears, right? This is going to be cash flowing 300 after the refinance, and it's going to be, It makes sense. And your money is safe, right? That's what you need to tell them. You're going to get your payment. This is why, right? And if you're able to address that.
Yeah. And one of the things is, and I always tell people this now, when is the best time to start a business? It's when you already have a job, because banks love seeing that you have a job and then you have W-2 income. And so when I started this whole venture, this was a side hustle for me. I didn't just decide to quit my 6-figure job and jump head first into real estate. I started this up on the side to where bankers are looking at my financials and saying, even if he does lose money on this deal, he's still getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. So we're going to be made whole on this whole thing. So that was part of what allowed me to get the financing as well.
Yeah, yeah, very cool, very cool. And you said this was kind of the ideal BRRRR, right? The perfect BRRRR. For some people who don't know, who are not familiar in terms of the numbers and kind of how it works and what you should be looking for, using this deal, maybe use that as an example of what it looks like and how it worked out for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, this is just a single family, 3-bed, 2-bath house, about 1,000 square feet is typically our sweet spot here in our market. ARV or after repair value of this home is around $100,000. And so I'm looking to be all into the property at around $75,000. That means my purchase price, my closing costs, and my rehab all needs to be at 75 or under. And sometimes it'll go a little above that and you're still making great returns at that point too. But the goal, if you want to completely get all your cash back out, is to be under 75%. So on this particular deal, paid about 65 for it, had a $5,000 rehab budget, which is just like paint, carpet, and fixing a few minor things in the house. So it's pretty close to rent ready already. And just did those little things. So a couple thousand in closing costs. I was under that $75,000 mark, which would be 75% of my ARV. And so now I can go to refinance the property. They're going to send an appraiser out to the property, and it appraised for 100,000, just like I was projecting. And so now they can give me 75% of the appraised value, which is going to pay off my first mortgage that I got on the property to buy it in the first place, and then pay off any rehab loans that I had, or if I use money out of pocket, that's going to get all of that made whole to me as well. And so now I'm sitting there with a $75,000 mortgage, which is, maybe $350 a month in a mortgage payment. And of course, you've got vacancy and repairs and CapEx that you want to budget for. You've got maybe a couple of landlord paid utilities that you budget for as well. So building that all into your costs. But this particular property is going to rent for $1,200 a month. So there's a good $300 or $400 of cash flow after you back out all of your expenses. And we put property management in place, so there's no really any work from my standpoint unless they're authorized to do any type of maintenance calls or repairs that are under $300. But if an AC goes out or something big, they just call me and say, hey, AC went out, we need to get a new one. This is what it's going to cost. And I just sign off on it. But other than that, that's like, completely hands off. And I've created a couple $100 in cash flow and an asset that's going to be appreciating with the market here. So that's basically how you do the BRRRR method, and how you can, take that and do it over and over again, because you're not needing capital to build this whole portfolio out. And eventually you get to a point like I did, where I had 10 of these BRRRR properties, and I had roughly 3,000 in cash flow coming in every single month. That gave me the confidence to be able to leave my corporate job for good and then never have to go back again. And I always tell people, $3,000 a month doesn't sound like a ton of money, but in real estate, most of this is tax-free. Mm-hmm. So when you're making $36,000 a year, that's tax-free, it feels a lot more like 60 or 70 a year.
Yeah, very true. And it's like you said, the BRRRR method is such a powerful tool, because also, but people don't understand, when you do that refinance, the cash out refinance, you don't pay taxes on it.
Right.
That's so cool, right? When you do a cash out refinance, you don't pay any tax. When you sell a property, unless you do a 1031 or something, an installment sale or something like that, you're paying taxes on it. But when you do a cash out refinance, you're not paying. So you can take that, like you said, if you do it right, you're able to pull that 75,000 out, and then you can reinvest that. So you have a property that you have no money in, you can do it again, and hopefully you can just keep turning and burning these properties. And if you live a little bit in, but you're essentially using that same money to buy multiple properties. And was that the case with you? Was it essentially that money that you started out with, pretty much, that you ended up buying 10 properties that was throwing off 3,000?
Yep. Yeah, it was all the same cash, kind of recycled over and over again. And now we're kind of working backwards and like paying off some of the first properties that we got under, and into the BRRRR method on. So I want to keep that, leverage position as tight as possible, but at the same time growing with it as well.
So when you got to 10, how big is your portfolio now? I guess is my question.
We have about 17 units now through the BRRRR method.
Okay, and are you still looking for more, or have you stopped and focused on
the? Yeah. So we keep buying, a couple properties a year, And then we're also doing flips on a couple a year as well. But I'm kind of conscious about, I don't want to keep mortgaging properties forever. So right now we're taking cash flow and paying off kind of the first ones that we did this model with, and then adding one so that we're kind of capping our risk with how much mortgages we're putting out on properties.
Right. So it's a lower your leverage, essentially, is what you're doing.
Exactly.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. But now also through this, when did you, so when you decided to leave, is that when you decided to be an agent, or did you just leave and was like, I love real estate and I love this method, let me try and help other people? How did that come about?
Yeah. So when I became a licensed agent, it was kind of about 8 or 9 years ago. What happened was I went out to buy my first property to live in, and my real estate agent was terrible. Like, it was the worst experience ever. I had to like Google figure out how to do this on my own. And so after that experience, I knew I was kind of young and I had a lot of friends and family that were moving into, trying to buy homes as well. So I thought, hey, I just finished my MBA. I didn't have anything to do in the evening. So I decided to study for my real estate license. Got licensed and never thought there would be any type of career for me in real estate. It was just kind of like a little side hustle to generate some extra cash. And when this whole thing of, me starting to invest and figuring out how to do all this stuff, I look back at that first property and think, gosh, if I would have had an agent that had some investment experience with me, I could have avoided all of those mistakes and all that pain. And so that's what I'm really passionate about now is we create a company called Wealth Agents, where we're real estate investment advisors. And so we're literally one-on-one helping you through this whole process so you don't have to do it alone. And the best part is you don't have to pay us tens of thousands of dollars for coaching like a lot of these gurus ask for. We're literally getting paid by the sales commission on the back end when you close on a property. So it's really cool, and it's a cool way to give back and help other investors get started as well.
That's awesome. And so, from my understanding, you help people do the BRRRR essentially, right? I'm sure you help do multiple things, but that your main focus is to help people that want to implement the BRRRR method.
Yeah, we do it all. So we help people do the Burr method. We help people do out of state investing. We help people do fix and flips, just turnkey, buy and hold, really anything under the sun. My specialty is really the buy and hold, because that's where the real wealth is made, as opposed to some of these fix and flip and wholesale type models. I love the buy and hold, and creating passive cash flow is something that I'm really passionate about helping other people do.
So do you guys have a team set up of lenders that you can set people up with, property managers, of construction guys? You have one-stop shop for all of that?
Yeah, so that's what's kind of cool about working with us is literally I took my investment business and opened it up to all of our clients on the agency side of things. So all the lenders I use, all the contractors I use, attorneys, property managers, anybody that you need as an investor to network with, we've already got somebody that we know, like, and trust that we can introduce you to and can be a part of your team.
Very cool, very cool. And then out of interest as well, if someone comes up to you and they want to work with you and it's saying out of state investing and they want to do the BRRRR method, how involved do they need to be? I'm sure obviously they need to be involved to some extent, but do they need to be there every month checking the property for the construction work? Do they need to be vetting the construction people? Or can they lean on you guys and use you guys to do a lot of this stuff? How does that look and work?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about personal preference, honestly. Like, we have some clients that have never stepped foot in properties that we've bought, sold, rented for them. We have other investors that want to come see them before they write offers on them, which can be difficult in this market just because things are moving so quickly. And then probably the most common way we see is like we'll put a property under contract with an inspection period, and then they'll make arrangements to come in town while they can still walk the property and still decide if they want to negotiate the price further or they want to back out of the deal completely. But yeah, we try to make it as hands off as possible with like virtual showings. We drop photos and videos to a Google Drive for them, make it really easy for them to do everything they need to do remotely.
Very cool, very cool. And I'm sure what a lot of people are thinking in their heads now. I know what I'm thinking is the market is crazy hot, right? I don't know St. Louis personally, but I just know nationwide, like it's bananas everywhere, right? Multiple offers above or at least that list price all the time. Are you guys finding trouble finding deals that pencil out because of the BRRRR, because of that you need to be all in for 75%?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many times a week I hear people say we can't find any deals, but it literally is just not true. The market inventory, you're right, is at all-time lows. Like literally, here in my market, it's 1 month of inventory out there in the market, which if you're not familiar with months of inventory, a balanced market has 6 months of inventory. That means if no new listings came out for 6 months, all of the inventory would be gone. So right now we're running at a rate where in 30 days, if a new listing doesn't come out, it's all gone. There's nothing for sale on the market. What people don't know is that a lot of activity happens off market. So in our market here, about 20% of all real estate transactions happen off the MLS, off the market. And so we've got our hands plugged into a lot of these channels with wholesalers, other agents. I have an investment company that works directly with marketing to sellers. So we have the option of getting clients off market deals, which opens up a lot more possibilities for them. And then with the ones that are on the market that have the competition, we've developed kind of the relationships to be able to win in these multiple offer situations. We know a lot of the other agents out there. We also know how to tailor our offers to be competitive, right? We're putting in escalation clauses. We're dropping our contingencies. We're making it as strong as possible to where if we are getting in a bidding war, a lot of times we're coming out ahead there.
Very cool, very cool. And that's why you want to have experienced agents, people that know what they're doing on your team, right? That's because of these reasons, especially now more than ever, if you want to get a good deal and be able to win these. So yeah, man, it's really cool. I love that you were able to, focus in on what you wanted to do. So you had a goal, and then in 2 years you were able to create enough cash flow that you were able to leave your job. And then since then, obviously, you've done, you've built this business as well, wealth agents business, and you're helping other people do it. So it's really cool. And man, I love the Burr. It's just such a powerful tool, especially someone starting out, because you can just, people think you need so much money to invest in real estate, but you don't, right? You need, you'd be surprised how little you need. And you can sometimes even have no money and just use other people's money completely. And it's just, there's so many options out there. And the Burr method is one of those things that you can actually do multiple ways, right? With passions and different ways. So man, I hope people, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, my eyes have been completely open to some of these things. It's crazy. We had a client which years ago I would have told them there's no way you could invest in real estate because you have no way to get the funding for this type of stuff. But like literally, she was a bartender, made cash tips, literally didn't have any money left over at the end of the month after paying rent, after paying her living expenses, all this stuff. And we've just helped her acquire her 4th unit.
Wow.
And it's just crazy because we taught her how to do private lending, how to show somebody else how to invest their money that they've got sitting in a savings account, making 0.25% interest, how to show them how to 10x their return by paying you, what is that, like 4 or 5% in interest, and then loaning you the money to buy your rental units, and you get all the cash flow and you're paying them, interest payments. So I just saw her do that, and like there's no more excuses available to people. Like you can have zero money, you can have zero time, you can have zero experience, and we can still show you how to successfully invest in real estate.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And so how did she do the refinance then? How did she get a refinance? Did she do a stated income loan or something? How did
she hasn't refinanced it. So she just literally got a private lender to 100% finance her purchase. So she just pays the private lender principal and interest. And I think it was like at a 4 or 5% interest rate. And of course, the rents cover that and much more. And so she's getting cash flow every single month. And she's got basically 4 units of rental income coming in. And I think eventually she'll have, once you get to about 2 years of getting rental income, the banks can now count that towards your income, and so she will be able to get bank financing coming up here in the near future.
Very cool, very cool. And like you said, no excuses, right? People have got no excuses. You don't need money, you don't need credit, you don't need almost anything, right? There is a way for everyone. There is an absolute way for everyone. Yeah, cool. Well, as this show is called Wrestling with Real Estate, I like to incorporate some wrestling related real estate questions. And the first one is, what would your wrestling name be?
Oh man, my wrestling name would be Agent David O.
I like the sound. That's got a good ring to it. I like the sound of that a lot. I can see
I'll wear like a black and white suit and some sunglasses, and I'll just be coming into the ring.
I can envision that. That's cool. That's cool. So every wrestler has a special move. What is your special move in real estate?
My special move is just getting deals done. Like I feel like at this point in my career, there's not an obstacle that shows up that I can't figure out a way to overcome and get it done, where it's like a win-win for everybody. I've seen deals just both sides of the transaction give up. We're not going to be able to get it done. And then I'll just figure out a way to make it work for everybody. And that's kind of been my superpower this past couple of years.
What's been the biggest body slam you've taken in your real estate career?
Biggest body slam had to been on that first deal. And I remember it very vividly because my rehab budget had already started racking up pretty high. And the contractors had just took down this wood paneling in the basement. And they said, Dave, you got to get over here, man. This whole wall is about to cave in. And I just dropped what I was doing and went over to the house, met with a foundation contractor there. And he literally told me that the house had to be jacked up. They had to replace this entire foundation wall, and it was going to cost me $20,000. And he left, and I broke down, man. I lost it. I was literally choke slammed on the concrete floor at that time. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I called my friend at the time, who was the only person I knew in life that had done an investment real estate deal. And he said, Dave, just put yourself together and get 3 bids. Get 3 bids. And so the second bid I got was $12,000. And then the third bid I got was like $6,000. And I was like, okay, I can choke down 6,000, got it done, got that property sold and moved on.
Wow. Yeah, I'm glad it wasn't that first bid. That's how much it was, man. Yeah, but it's how we learn sometimes, right, through these things.
Yep.
So was there a moment that you were standing on the top rope getting ready to jump, but you were too scared? What was it and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, it was just like from the time that I kind of got bit by this real estate investment bug and started getting addicted to reading books and listening to podcasts about the subject. I mean, there was a considerable amount of time, almost a year, before I actually bought my first property. And there was many times during that time period where I was like so close to either writing an offer or making a move to get into my first investment property. And yeah, it's just like you get so caught up with how do I do all these things when really you just got to do one step at a time and you can figure it out as you go. Because you're not going to know everything until you get started and getting experience. And just literally, if you do your first deal and you didn't make any money, but you didn't lose any money, that would be a huge win to me in my book, because you've shown yourself that you can go through the process and you know what needs to be done. So yeah, just getting started and getting over that fear of analysis paralysis is key.
Very true. Very true. Well, Dave, hey, thank you so much, man, for making the time today. This has been an awesome interview. I love the Burr Method and I love what you're doing in helping other people. But before we go, if people want to reach out to you, people want to get in touch with you, how can they do so?
Yeah, they can reach out to me. My website's agentdavido.com, social media at Agent Davido on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Love chatting with people, love talking about real estate. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, man. And have an awesome rest of your day out there in St. Louis.
Awesome. Thanks, Barry. You as well.